Hello, everybody. Before we start working on Canterbury Tales, I wanted to give you some information about the time period of the Middle Ages, so between 1066 and 1485. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the following questions as we go through the Canterbury Tales unit. How does an author convey purpose? How does this literature reflect that time period? Should we place certain expectations on our upper and or lower classes based on their social role? How do values affect the journeys that people takes? And then how do we tell the tales of our own journeys? So in 1066, William the Conqueror defeated the English king, and he installed himself as king because he thought he should, right? And implemented the social structure known as feudalism. So feudalism was a social class system, and so at the top, William the Conqueror, he became king, so he was all powerful, and then below him were the nobles. Then came the knights. At the very, very bottom, and this is a lot of our controversy will come between the different stereotypes associated with classes. So we have the serfs, the peasants, the working class, and in the middle we kind of have those businessmen that we would call them today, or merchants and tradesmen. So the issues with feudalism is you were kind of stuck. If you were born into lower class, you stayed into lower class. If you were in upper class, you were protected, sort of. The serfs were bound to land even though they didn't own it. They were not, however, bought and sold. They provided services to the Lord. They had to pay money. So think about Robin Hood and how they had to taxes, right? Ordinary people came across Europe and had to tithe 10% of their earnings to the church. It was law at the time, and the church was mostly exempt from taxation. So there was a lot of corruption in the church, and you will see that theme as we read Canterbury Tales. Last, women were classified differently. So if you remember in Beowulf, the women, the land was in their name. But like men and women that were born in the second or third estate, they could maybe become members of the first, meaning if they played all their cards right, but they really didn't have any rights. They were just kind of stuck there without choice, having to deal with the upper classes rules and regulations. All right, so the dark side means that there was no real scientific progress made, no big art produced, there wasn't any great leaders. Things just kind of maintained status quo for 500 years. The people of the Middle Ages squandered advancements of their predecessors, so any new technology or leadership advancements were just kind of left to maintain or even go backwards. And then after the fall of Rome, no single state or government united the people who lived on the European continent. So they continued to fight the different countries, and what happened was the Catholic Church became the most powerful institution because of the governments fighting with each other. So there's two key words, or two descriptive words, barbarism and religion. So fighting and then the power of the church. All right, other events, there were holy wars by the European and the Christians against the Muslims. They thought of the Jews and Muslims. They slaughtered them and killed them. Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, we will read a little bit by him later, was murdered for speaking against the king on numerous occasions. The Magna Carta was signed, which later became the basis of English constitutional law, and there was the instance of Black Death, so a pandemic or a disease that went through and that reduced the population by a third, causing a labor shortage and giving lower classes more bargaining power. So into the text of Canterbury Tales, we'll see that our author is Geoffrey Chaucer. He was from toward the end of this era, a merchant from the middle class, so toward the bottom of the power, and that's where you're going to see some of his facetiousness, or he'll be flippant, kind of sarcastic, as he talks about those above and below him. This is a collection of 24 fictional stories and over 17,000 lines of prose. We're going to read 2 of the stories and the prologue, the introduction. It was meant to call people out, to reveal the people in the society of the age. So it was kind of, yeah, the first WikiLeaks. So here's the beginning, and it was kind of published with the photographs. The prologue is where all the characters will be introduced, and that's going to be the part that we read on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on your section. The stories then are going to be told by each of the pilgrims that they talk about, each of the characters in this story. They're all going to have their own trip, their own pilgrimage, where we'll hear their story along the way. To frame the story, Chaucer has each of his pilgrims tell a story on their way to Canterbury. So it'd be like if we were all going to Minneapolis, we would all tell our own version of that story. So there's a story within the story. And he's one of the pilgrims himself, and he plays the role as the narrator. So it's said that he never finished all the tales, that they were still a work in progress when he passed away. So the pilgrimage begins way over at a Tabard Inn in Southwark, just outside of London, and it ends 55 miles at Canterbury, southeast of London, and they were visiting the shrine of Thomas A.